Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining today's partner roundtable. We had several dozen people register, so I hope everyone will be able to show up. As I said in the emails, we want to regularly start doing these meetings once more so we can collectively share knowledge across all of the partners we have within our global community. So for today's roundtable, we're going to focus on discussing best practices for the deployment as we want to continue to streamline the process and make the efforts go as smoothly as possible for everyone. And so I know across our community we've had partners who have been deploying software for a number of years, and they've learned many lessons and have great advice that we'd like to share, so partners new and old can benefit from these improvements and know what are the best practices and how to both deploy technology and get it successfully adopted across user bases. So in terms of today's agenda, we'll just start with some brief introductions, and then the majority of the meeting is really going to be open discussion across everybody. So we'll present a few, topics. We'll have a few, leading members of the community open the discussion and present their perspectives, but then we really want it to be an open discussion and then guide the conversation as it goes and hopefully cover, a meaningful amount of topics. And if we have to schedule a subsequent roundtable to dive into detail in more depth on a specific topic, we can. And then there'll just be a few closing remarks at the end. So just to recap on the goal, we want to bring everyone together, share experiences, discuss best practices, identify what those challenges are in deploying technology systems for financial inclusion, as there are some, unique constraints that one must deal with, and there's many, tips and tricks that we can share to better the process over time. So we'll get started with some introductions. So let me just go back to the agenda page, and then I'm going to start unmuting people. So. Okay, so Boniface, I think you're first on my list. Do you want to introduce yourself and just say, what organization you're with, where you're calling from, and how many deployments your team has done? So.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Jikal. We're just doing introductions right
Hi.
now, so I'll get to you in a moment. We're going to go down the list of attendees.
Sure.
So Boniface, you might be muted, so we'll come back to you later on. And then Oscar, do you want to introduce yourself? You might be muted as well, Oscar. So we'll go to you, Jikal. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jikal, and just say, what organization with, where you're calling from, and how many deployments your team has worked on? So.
Sure. Yes. My name is Cikal. I'm coming from Indonesia. Exactly is Jakarta city. So I'm 18 years already in the IT. My last assignment supposed to be principal of a consultant. So currently, we are working on a cooperative among in Jakarta City and also Java Island. So, we are now focusing on the goals is we are set up our for internal client. So, is a relative client for us. So currently now we have 4 to 5 cooperative join with us. So we are building community networking, and then we are supporting by also the main mother vessel of Induk UMKM. That means small medium enterprise community. So we are working on it, and then I'm very interesting join with this roundtable. So perhaps I can contribute to my Mifos and etc.
Okay.
Since also we also handling the customization, porting, integration with others application like a crowdfunding. So I mean, in the future should be have benefits and advantage for our community. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you for that intro, Jikal. We're looking forward to hearing your perspectives. And then Sifiso, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. Hello. Hi, Ed, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right, okay, perfect. Right, my name is Fiso, as everyone can see over there. I work with Skyblock Systems, and we cover Mifos for the South African region. We are based in Zimbabwe, so we cover the Southern African region, mainly since our headquarters are in Zimbabwe. That's where most of our focus lies in. We are deployment partners, and we are also contributors to the Mifos community. And well, I think we've been working with Mifos since 2013, isn't it? Ed, 2013, right?
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, that's in general what
Okay.
we're
Thank you.
all about.
Thanks for that intro, Sifiso. And then Wycliffe or Matumba, do you want to introduce Jay Floyd just briefly? So. Oh, I think you're muted, Wycliffe. We'll come back to you. And then Javier David, you just want to briefly introduce yourself to the participants on the call?
Okay, hi guys. I'm Javier David. I'm based in Uruguay. I'm the security officer for Astropay and Local, a payments processing company, and I'm a strategic advisor to the Mifos initiative.
Okay, thanks, JD, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
And then Manuel, do you want to come off mute and introduce yourself and flexibility?
Hi everyone. I am from Argentina. Um, we are very new. We didn't know deploy, so but we have to learn. That's what going to the meeting. Sorry, my English is very poor. Sorry.
Oh no, that was fine. Manuel, thank you for
introduce myself too. Is okay?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Manuel. And is it Pablo that's on too?
My name is Manuel. Damian is working with us in flexibility.
Okay, Fabian. Okay.
How we are trying to get the first step to get the information needed to do the deployments of Mifos. That's all at the moment. I'm in the coffee and there's a lot of sound, so I keep my microphone mute to maintain this in a healthy mode.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you, Manuel, for joining. Okay, and so rather than we'll move into the open discussion part of the call, and just as you come on and discuss something for the first time, you could briefly introduce yourself, and that way we'll have the full time dedicated to the discussion. So let me just begin sharing the screen once again, and then Sander, if you want to take yourself off mute, I'll let you just first start off by talking about how a deployment typically goes for you, and then we'll allow a few others to talk about that, and I think that'll help to just get the discussion going in the right direction, and then we'll move into a few specific targeted questions. So let me go back to the slide deck. Oh, and Sander, are you able to come off mute? Okay, great.
Yeah. Sorry, I was waiting for your slide deck. I wasn't sure you prepped slides for me.
Oh no, there's no slides. Just saying that this is what we'll be.
Oh, they're not for me.
Talking
God,
okay.
that's such a shame. No,
Okay.
so my name is Sander. I'm with Masoni. So far, we've deployed I think 85 different MFIs with the system. So for us, quite typically, the first thing that happens after MFI starts working with us is that we go through the process of training. So the MFI will get a demo environment where they can get online training from one of our team. They will take them through, most of the time they're administrative users, they'll take them through things like how to configure the chart of accounts, set up your products, etc. And in that process of training, we also quite often find out exactly where potential problems might be in this particular migration or not. So that training typically lasts 2 times 2 hours, something like that, 2 times 1.5 hour sessions with different groups of users. There's most of the time one more generic training where we train what we call champions. Those are the more tech-savvy, eager users within the organization that will then, as champions, go out and train the rest of their colleagues in a face-to-face situation on things like onboarding a client, creating a loan, setting up a savings account, etc. And then there's more administrative specific training on things like system configuration. And that second training is basically also the start of a data migration because, well, obviously before you can start migrating any data into the system, you'll need to have some basics set up such as products, etc. So after those 2 training sessions, quite frequently we'll ask the client to set up their products themselves and make sure that they work as they expect. And once that's done, we use the data import tool. I think you all know it if you've done some deployments to generate the data import templates. And then the process of back and forth with the customer starts on getting those templates right and getting them correct. And then we do the import for them on our end. But that's mostly because we then can take quickly a database backup before you import anything and easily roll back and not make that the burden of the client. So once that process is complete, so all data is in, and sometimes that's a process that takes, let's say, a week where the MFI needs to prep everything. We've had occasions where it takes them, and this is most of the time on the side of the MFI, these type of delays, but where it takes the MFI 3 months, 4 months to get the data correct or to get the data from all of their branches verified and for everyone to be happy with it. Once this is then complete, then the client signs off on the status of the data, basically sending us a physical signed piece of paper that obviously gets scanned, but at least making sure that there's a signature on where they approve the current status of the data before they go to the live environment. And this is mostly to avoid any discussion after go live about balances or about missing data and customers blaming us for it and us saying, look guys, you've checked the data yourself, you should have noticed. And then the customer's live. So that's the deployment process. If there's no data migration, the deployment can therefore happen within 24 hours if one of our guys is available to do the online training and the customer is available as well. We've done complete greenfields within 24 hours. For training and that type of stuff. We've also had migrations that took 6 to 9 months, but that was most of the time in cases where there was really problematic data on the side of the MFI, and that's obviously not something that we can sort for them.
Okay, thank you, Sander, for that perspective. And then for just like the initial planning and a needs assessment and any analysis of processes and gaps, is that done more during the sales cycle and not during the deployment, or is that part of the initial training?
Yeah, so that's definitely done during the sales cycle. What we've seen in the past is if you, we do a full system demo where we sound out quite a lot of the requirements of the MFIs, and where the MFIs also do ask us for a lot of the questions about functionality. And obviously, you still have, from time to time, situations where during a migration you find out that there's a huge piece of missing functionality. But that happens a lot less frequently these days, and we try to avoid that by being very, very transparent, but sometimes also thorough in questions we ask people when they talk about certain products or certain product criteria that they are looking for, and to really make sure that, and that's also part of the sales pitch, to make sure that if they do get a demo from one of our guys, that they do actually in the demo or in us taking them through the demo, we set up a product that works exactly like their common loan product and like their common savings product, so that we know for sure that at least all of their urgent and high priority items are immediately ticked before they sign any license agreements and start using.
Okay, and how many of these system demo meetings would you say is typical before you have a good sense of the overall requirements and fit of the system?
For most of the MFIs, actually, depending on who's on the other end of the line, most of this is already pretty well known and clear within the first 1 or 2 calls, but that's mainly part of the sales process. I think that the amount of scoping that happens in this type of project on our side is pretty small, and what we also see is that even though all MFIs think they're very different, within any region we see so much similarity between MFIs that they're almost well, if there are surprises, it's most of the time when we move into a completely different region or a completely different country, where there's just a completely different product type or product that's very common. But in the same regions, in the East Africa or West Africa region, there's just very much similarities between products and very many similarities between the way MFIs operate.
Okay. And then are there others on the call who would like to start just by discussing how their deployment typically goes and what are the main phases of your deployments?
Ed, would it be appropriate for me to ask Sander a question, or is that going to be something reserved for the end of?
Yeah, go right ahead with the question. We want this to be a discussion, JD, so please go right ahead.
Sander, hi. What about environment setup from a technical perspective? Do you guys have like one central multi-tenant environment? Do you set up individual environments for each customer? What does the technical process look like for getting a new customer on board?
Yeah, currently we still have one multi-tenanted environment. We're actually, because of performance issues, looking to make that 2 or 3, but that's more on the performance side than that it's actually the preference. And we, just to also answer the question in the chat, we only deploy on our own hardware. That's the only way we feel we can have sufficient control over the system that we deliver to the customers. And on the technical side, what that means is we've obviously developed some scripts that can be kicked off to set up things like an S3 bucket with its own credentials and its own user and API keys, and to set up a separate database together with its own user and its own password, and to therefore configure an instance that uses that database and password and create a default user on that instance with another random password that ends up going to the customer.
Thank you.
And Kazim, yes, that's true. So I think one of the main issues we see with on-site deployment is that in case of any form of, well, basically it gives you a relatively high maintenance model in terms of if you have to do an upgrade of your platform, you have to do it in many local installations or installations that you don't have full control over. There's 2 issues with that. 1, it's manual work that you're replicating, and 2, it's even you might be able to automate some of the manual work. The automation of that manual work needs to be very sophisticated to take care of any like version issues between different servers, compatibility issues, capacity issues, whatever there's possible. So by only having the cloud-based version of the system, we are in control of the full end-to-end delivery of the system to the customer, and that gives us control over their user experience, but also over backups, over security, and over the whole chain.
In Sendoro, I think there might be some more questions for you, Sander, but
Yes, I have a question to Sandra. That so, according to what I heard from him, so the sign-off stage is only the go live stage for most of your deployment. Is that correct?
Well, so the sign-off stage is basically what we've learned in the first few deployments that we did, is that if an MFI is only asked, is your data correct, they will very quickly say yes, because whoever's on the other end of the line is most likely under pressure from their management, from their board, or from users, or from whatsoever within the organization to just get the system live as fast as possible. That's the deliverable. And then after 2 weeks of using the system, or sometimes after 2 months, suddenly it's like all the loan balances are incorrect, or 50% of our clients are missing. And that's a lesson you learn on 1 or 2 occasions. And that's when we decided, okay, we're going to do a sign-off process here, so that the MFI at least signs a document where there's about 15 or 20 bullet points. Is this correct? Is that correct? Have you confirmed this? Can you confirm that? Can you confirm, etc., etc. And once all those points are checked and they sign off on that document, there still will be situations where there's a problem, but at least we force them to think about them. We force them to sign off. And if there is this type of problem, there's at least a form of formal document where we can say, okay, look, guys, why did you sign this? And who's going to pay for all the extra work that we're now going to have to do for you? Because that's obviously also the case a lot of the time in this type of situation. JD, on your question, we didn't really have any of that yet in East African and West African region. What we have done in many occasions is we do offer customers to send them daily backups of all of their data, and they can then give us either an SFTP or an S3 bucket or something like that, where we can transfer that to every day. And what we've seen is that for East African regulators, that is also seen as sufficient for having the data local. On the other hand, we've also heard, for instance, from Indonesia that that's completely unacceptable and that you have to have your data in country. And I can also tell you that for exactly that reason, in the past we have turned down opportunities ourselves, because we don't want to end up in a situation where we're operating in either very expensive or low quality data centers, or where we're just operating a data center with just one customer running on that piece of infrastructure, which is just not sensible from a cost perspective.
Yes, we are set up the AWS right now, and also for the demo, I creating the under OpenShift free one, the trial version. So I doing manually creating for that, and then for all the customers should be supposed to be in AWS. So we'll not build the data center. It's very expensive right now, since also security issue. And then my plan is not only the technical, but the community itself, because we want to integrate it with the crowdfunding. That means the performance indicator of a financial, also for the loan or saving each our client, and also in the region, so that we can promote through through the mobile application, and then from the data perspective for Mifos, so feed up. So I have a demo for that. Later on, I will prepare for it, because currently now we are starting the new office, so it's a lot of homework that we switch off from our old stuff. So basically, the strong point for our development stage is supposed to be integration with the Mifos with others application. And then for that point, I can contribute the source code, and you can also view my GitHub, so we can contribute any maybe any project for that actually, and then we can share. Yes.
Can I ask you a question on Indonesia? So from what we've heard is that hosting a microfinance.
Yeah.
Hosting the data of a microfinance on AWS there is unacceptable from the regulator perspective. So why are you then hosting on AWS?
Okay, because the client required to have a AWS, because that's a client required. For the perspective for regulation, right? For the perspective for regulation, I know that some of a cooperative, they will not accept to put the data under AWS, because the the region issue. But then I realized that they not, because currently only 3% they use online application. Okay, the perspective from them is very easy. They don't know the technology, and then they're afraid about the technology. That's the point. And then for the perspective of the Mifos, using the regulation, I have a modification for Mifos in terms of accounting, because in Indonesia very I think traditional to put saving account, liability saving account is not liability but equity. That's I need to custom, but I don't custom in under programming. I customize using workaround. So means I just create one batch application. One batch posting accounting. So from current default Mifos configuration, there's liability, right? And then when they put the balance, they will be posting automatically to equity balance. That's workaround. That's only difference a cooperative or microfinance in Indonesia. That's only that one. And then the rest is okay. The rest they can accept, especially the Android client, because a lot of the region is very big. So we trying to implement, I think should be end by this month in outside Jakarta. A lot of that debt collector to using the Mifos Android. So in the perspective the regulation, they don't bother about that too.
Okay, well, thanks, Jikal. That'll be something it'll be good to continue to explore, and thanks, Sander, for bringing that concern that you had. And so we'll follow up on that as another point of discussion later. And then, Sophie, perhaps do you want to come off mute and talk a little bit about how your deployment process typically goes?
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Typically, our deployments, we normally operate off one server. When we approach the clients, we normally get to ask them how they want to run their system on a dedicated server or on a shared hosting server. So once someone's chosen to go with shared hosting, we've got a few clients, because the platform is the same for most of them. And when they're on the shared hosting, we operate off one database where we've got an instance for each tenant. If they're going to be on a dedicated hosting server, then they're going to be they probably in most cases have their own customizations, similarly to what Sander normally works with at Musoni. So I mean, shared hosting clients will typically take us probably about 30 minutes to have their systems running, because it's just a matter of adding a new tenant to an already existing implementation. And then on a dedicated hosted server, then it's a matter of we have in data centers probably not hosted locally, because we don't host them ourselves. Most of them, we're partnered with certain suppliers that give us this hardware. So we've asserted I mean, it's compliant, and we've assessed that, and we know them very well and how they work with microsystems from their previous history. So we've been working with them for a while, and on our dedicated servers, we would already know what software we're going to meet with every time we get a new project going. So implementations like that would probably take us about a week. If we're going to deploy for a new client and they require things like training and stuff, and especially data importation, which takes the longest time, we take a maximum of about 30 days, that's a month. So what we strive to do is our process works by, we first do our implementation, get the system up and running, right, on the back end, and then we train our clients on the system on a demo instance on the same server, their own server. And then once we've got the training done, then we go and start setting up their data and configure everything for them, the products, the general ledgers, and all of that. So for the clients that do not have any clientele to import onto their system, I mean, that would be the last stage, which for us, that's a week, 7 days, 7 plus or minus. If they do have data importation, then we've got an extra stage after training. We do the data importation. We set the system up. We do the data importation, and then we release the system for them to run. At which stage, then we get to sign with them for them to give us their assessments and give us a thumbs up that the system is running according to their requirements.
Okay, and how long does that user acceptance testing typically take for you?
Sorry, how long does?
Oh, that sign off at the final stage of the deployment. How long does that process typically take?
Well, we would want the sign-off stage to be very short. I mean, we after we've already gone through training, and the sign-off stage is just a matter of them looking into the system, finding that the clientele that they required us to import for them during the data import stage is all there, that their transactions balanced to the T. And so it's very short. It's 3 days. That's how much we're assigned to the sign-off stage. But it's short because they actually contribute. I mean, they're part of the data importation themselves. We get them to populate the sheets that are downloaded off the data import tool itself. So we provide them the templates, and we get them to take their data and populate that the grids themselves. And then once they've done that, we assign ourselves the duty of just uploading the data and making sure that everything is processed the way it's supposed to be. So whatever balances that they had, we just make sure that it's calculating the balance and the repayments and giving the correct amounts at the end. But they're responsible for the information that we're not going to get into their database, extract the information. We might help them extract the data from wherever it's being hosted with another system, but we give them the template so that they can populate that data and make sure that X name belongs to a certain branch or office, and it's got a certain balance owing, and has made such and such an amount of repayments, something like that. And then we just take that data raw and process it and make sure what they've given us is exactly what's going to be appearing on the system.
Okay. And then how much of your deployment, how much of this is done on site with the client, and how much are you doing remotely with them? Is this all on site, everything you've described? So.
Right. I think 70% of our deployments are remote, and about 30% of them are local. I mean, on site, what we normally do on site is go through a training and the sign off at the very end.
Okay.
But the rest of this we're doing remotely. We're sending templates by email. We're communicating through a conference. I mean, we're on Skype and stuff. So it's mostly remote. And so since we don't locally host the servers, we just connect to their servers online ourselves, just probably like they do at their offices.
Yeah. Okay, and then Sander, for you, pretty much every aspect of the deployment is remote. Is anything done on site with Musoni services?
Well, there's face-to-face training, but that's only if clients really ask us to come down and do a couple of days of training, and that's something we separately charge for in that case. But for us, actually, if we have a local country manager in the country where we do the deployment, then there is a chance that the initial training is also done face-to-face. But I think it's safe to say that we've done 90% of these deployments completely remote.
And then for that requirements gathering during the sales process, is that done remotely as well, or is that done?
Yeah. We've also done about 90% of our sales remotely. Obviously, there have been times when we were in the country and have had meetings with people, or where initial contacts were made on the ground. But it's safe to say that the vast majority of this is actually all just done over Skype and remotely.
Okay. And then Ashok, I think you're on the call now. You and Conflux have years of experience deploying Mifos and other systems. Could you just briefly share how your typical deployment process goes?
Okay. Hi, hello everyone. Is it audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Actually, I'm traveling. Hope there won't be much disturbance. Okay, so I'll leave the requirement gathering and all. You want to know the deployment, right? The requirement.
Yeah, like
you want to know the complete end-to-end process or just the deployment process?
Including the requirements gathering. Yeah, so just how from start of the sale to go live, like how long does the process typically take, and what are the main phases your team does? Are you still there,
okay.
Ashok? Okay.
Usually process varies between. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I got a call in between. So usually the process, customer onboarding process goes somewhere between 3 weeks to 3 to 4 months, based on the number of clients which we have to migrate. So usually one of us business analysts will talk to customer and get the requirements, and we try to map their loan products with Finplex. Then we'll see if there are any gaps. If there are any gaps, then we try to provide, we enhance the product and fill those gaps. And we identify what can be, like we divide into multiple phases. Phase 1, it's a go live, which must have. So those kind of gaps are addressed before going live. And if there are any other gaps which they can live with and they can go without having them in phase 1, so those things will take it in a later phase. So that is the reason our implementation goes somewhere between 3 weeks to 3 months. So once we get the requirement and mapping is done, product mapping, we follow a Excel sheet upload approach that's using a migration tool, or we'll write a ETL jobs to migrate the data. That is one way. And other way is like we'll write a ETL jobs for system to system integration. So we have done both the ways. So that takes some time. If it is a system to system integration, it takes couple of weeks to build that script and do a initial pilot migration. Once that is done, we match with their product definition and the product definition in Flux. So once that is done, then we use the same migration tool to migrate the rest of the data. When it comes to hosting, it's a multi-tenant. We are using AWS for hosting all our customers. So we host in a multi-tenant environment, and we are using instead of MySQL, we are using Aurora DB, which is provided by AWS. It is built on top of MySQL, but they have provided a lot of other supports like performance improvement, and they will provide the clustering, time in backup. So all those things are provided by AWS, and which is much faster than normal MySQL, which we deploy in EC2 instance. Once migration is done, then we'll focus on the phase 2 enhancements, and if it is required, again we'll stagger it into on phase 3 as well. So for when it comes to UAT user acceptance, so usually we give 1 week to 3 weeks of time for acceptance. Once it is accepted, then we move those changes to the production. Okay, I hope this covers our migration, the implementation timeline and the way we are doing it.
Thanks, Ashok. And then what type of training do you do? Do you just do train the trainer training, or what's your training involved in the deployments?
Okay, training typically it goes like 3 to 5 days, initial training, and after that we provide a support. Like we have dedicated support team. If there are any other issues, it's like basically those are like a production support, wherein user is not able to do any particular functionality, or first time users, they don't know how exactly do the transactions. So those kind of things is a continuous process. So initial after 3 to 5 days of training, we provide a half an hour to 1 hour sessions in between whenever customer requests or any new employees joins to their team.
Okay, and then how much of this is done on site versus done remotely, Ashok?
90% of the things we do remotely. Only 10% we do it on site.
Okay.
That too, if it is in India, sometimes we visit customer during the requirement phase. Other than that, most of the things we try to complete from on our offsite, remotely. And for other customers outside of India, again, it's recently we went to Hana, that's in Myanmar. So they had some issues, operational issues, plus user training was required. So that was the only thing where we had to go to Myanmar and give a training face-to-face training. So other than that, we are doing all implementations, training, everything remotely.
Okay, thanks, Ashok. And I know we're getting through the time quite quickly, so I want to sort of shift gears a little bit as we've had some good discussion and good perspectives of what are the typical phases of a deployment. So I want to speak now from the perspective of the institution and the client itself. Like, what have you seen are those most critical roles that need to be filled by staff at the deployment? Like, who are those decision makers and people from the perspective of the financial institution that need to be a key part of this overall process? So I'll let anybody unmute themselves and speak to what are these key individuals that are needed on the financial institution side to be a part of the deployment. So
Okay, Ed, this is Ashok here.
mm-hmm.
So for deployment, usually we need their product team for during initial requirement discussion to understand their product structure, and we need a person from accounts team as well to map their accounting needs. So these two are the key people who are mainly required from implementation point of view. And even we need operations guys who will see that whether their operations can be mapped to our product, or there can, if there are any changes or deviations, so how to handle those deviations, or we may build enhance the product to address those issues. So we need three key people: operations, product team, plus accounts teams from financial institution side.
Okay.
And from our side, we need an implementation team who does that, plus a reporting team. If there are any reports, reporting team will take care of creating the new reports.
Okay, and then have you had challenges? Do you need like a key decision maker to champion the project? Have you had challenges where a deployment hasn't gotten completed because a decision maker hasn't been on board, or?
We had challenges not with the decision makers. It's because of operations team. They are not able to use the system, or they don't. They are not able to understand the system. So that was the major challenges we had. Other than that, once we signed the contract, we never had any such kind of issues where decision maker impacted anything, project's timeline.
Okay. And then for others on the call, like, what are those key roles and individuals you need participating from the customer side?
Yeah.
Hello.
From my end, my name is Kazim Dorodo. I'm speaking from Abuja, Nigeria.
Hey, Kazim.
Yes, I have two questions for the Musono guy and Ashok. The first one is, what typically goes wrong in an implementation? I mean, from the hundreds of implementations you have done, what do you normally see? What keeps you awake? What gives you headache? Then the second question is around reporting. Do you also keep the reports online, or how do you manage the ongoing MFB request? The request need changes from time to time. Do you manage that during the support process, or do you manage that during the initial onboarding?
Okay, thanks for those questions, Kazim.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure I fully got the first question, but on the second question, in terms of reports, I think we have about 70 reports. And actually, what we see is that 90% of those reports are going to be sufficient for all of our customers. There's always some small extras, and because we don't want to be constantly customizing reports for people, especially not for one-off reporting requests, or well, every now and then a certain manager will have a certain request or wants to do some further analysis, etc. We've built a data extractor, and that basically allows you to extract data from some of the core entities in the system in a very raw CSV type format. And that then allows anyone to go and take that data into Excel and to do whatever analysis they want, or to convert it into whatever management report format they want. If there's something very useful coming out of that, for instance, a useful metric that we think is beneficial for all of our customers, and that customer wants to add it or make it public, then that's something we can add to the set of system provider reports. But otherwise, we are, one of the lessons we've learned over the last 3 or 4 years is that once you start offering services such as custom reports to customers, then especially with a system that is as active in development as Mifos, you quite quickly are going to shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to maintaining those reports between releases. Building the report is one thing, but then maintaining a suite. We currently support 60 or 70 reports that we provide, but if you on top of that have 30 or 40 reports or 50 reports that you built for various MFIs as custom built reports, then you're updating 120, 130 reports between releases. And that also means that before any release can go live, you need to test 150 reports, whether they're still accurate, whether they still contain the correct data, whether they even still run. And well, I don't think that's feasible, or at least if it is feasible, most customers are not willing to pay any maintenance fees for custom reports, and that's why we decided to use a data extraction process.
Thank you, Sander. And then Ashok, do you want to briefly reply? And then I think the first question Kazim had, is a good one to steer the discussion around is, what are those biggest pain points and challenges during the deployments? And I think, that dovetails well with some of Sander's lessons learned. So we'll let, that be the final point of discussion, is just, what are those major pain points and what are the biggest lessons you've learned? And if people, don't have a chance to come off mute, please type them into the chat or into the notes document too. But I'll let you respond, Ashok, to Kazim's questions.
Okay, yeah. The major challenges, what we see is the product mapping, especially most of the institutes which we migrated to Finplex were like they were using some other system or they were doing in an Excel sheet. So major challenges were like migrating from existing system to the new system of Finplex. So there were a lot of calculation errors, or they were doing the interest portion, the repayments. Those are the real challenges which we had. So what we usually do is we correct those data, or we ask customers to provide the data in a specific format, so that we can minimize our efforts in uploading the data or migrating the data. Plus, once my data is migrated, then again we work on reconciling the migrated data to their existing system to make sure that all the GLs matches at accounting level. Plus on the portfolio side, everything matches. So that is where we see a lot of issues because of small transaction errors or the way the existing systems, the way of interest calculation. So if there is a little difference, that will make a huge migration, introduces huge migration challenges. So those are the major challenges we faced. Other than that, migrating customer or offices, those things are straightforward. We didn't have any other issues. Apart from that, loan migration, the other challenges like the existing product sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, existing product meets 80% of their requirement. So we end up enhancing the product by another 20% in most of the implementations. That is another big challenge. And as Sander mentioned about the reports, so maintaining reports is a challenge. So recently we resolved that problem. We are building custom reports for customer specific, and we deploy tenant by tenant. It's like we have two types of reports. One is a common reports, which is applicable for all the tenants in a instance, and we have a custom reports developed only for specific tenants. So that's, to some extent, we have resolved that, but still we have a lot of challenges in providing custom reports for every implementation. That is again, testing is a major challenge which we face.
Thank you, Ashok. And then others on the call, what would you say are the biggest challenges you faced or had to overcome in the deployment, and what are some of the lessons you have learned? So.
Well, I think actually one of the things we're seeing, and that's more of one of the larger gaps we're currently still having with the data import tool. I think challenges with the data import tool is that, and I'm sure Ashok, you can also back me up on this one, is that it gets relatively problematic when you're trying to migrate, let's say, 100,000 or 200,000 or 300,000 clients using the data import tool. You need pretty serious hardware to keep that speedy, and that's not necessarily something you can get around in this tool. It's basically the only way around it would be to do a SQL to SQL type of mapping, and that is a whole different process which we've done in the past, and that has its whole separate set of challenges. So I think performance of the data import tool is going to continue to be not necessarily an issue, but something to look out for when you're doing larger scale deployments. And the other thing is that the data import tool is obviously only a subset of what's available in the system. For instance, it's not possible to import things such as guarantors. It's not possible to import things such as data tables that you've set up. So those are things where we're looking to extend the functionality a bit, mostly to make sure that customers can actually get all of the data that they have from their old system instead of just the core portfolio data.
Thank you, Sander. And then others, do you have any of those major challenges that you've overcome, or some key tips you'd like to impart from your deployment experiences? Mutumba, I think you're coming off mute, but.
Yeah, well, I guess in addition to, I'll take you back to the key roles. On some of the major deployments I've been involved on, some of the key roles that are there on the project, it is normally the change management. We normally have the change management person or committee that kind of tries to look at what changes that you are trying to make, be it be a system change or a process change. Then on the part of data governance, because data ultimately belongs to the business users, what I've normally seen is that data governance is normally led by a business person or business users that are committed to the success of that deployment, of course with support from the technical or the IT department. And lastly, the other important roles or key personnel that I've seen on some of the projects have been, we call it EXCO. The executive committee is usually important to include them on some of the meetings. They usually bring about a positive impact on the project. So that's what I wanted to share on part of the key roles. And of course, on part of the challenges, usually what I've seen as a major challenge is if you don't get it right at the point of data mapping and product mapping, having them signed off by the business users. Normally, if you don't ensure that they sign off for the data mapping and product mapping, is usually a challenge, especially if things don't go right, if you not involve the users or the business users.
Okay, thank you for that advice, Mutumba. And I know I think Sindoro has a question there. Could you expand on that question, Sindoro, And then I know we've come to the end of the hour, and I think, we've learned from this call that, it was very ambitious to try and cover the whole deployment process. And we clearly, can spend an entire hour just on specific phases like reporting or data migration. So I think that's a good, lesson we can take forward. And now we have, other future topics we can explore for future roundtables. And I think also, we recognize that there is a lot of knowledge to be shared and a lot of questions to be had. So one of the improvements we want to make with engagement with our partners is having more of a partner, discussion forum where some of these topics can be shared, just amongst partners, and ideas and best practices can be discussed. So I'll send out some links where we can continue some of this discussion, as I know we didn't cover as much as we, would have hoped, but I think we started to, just get under the surface of a few of the major challenges, and we'll schedule future roundtables to discuss some of these topics. But Sindoro, I know you had that question. Do you want to speak to it before we wrap up the meeting? So.
Yes, it's good that we talk about challenging, which is very good for us, but also let's know from the presenters what are mostly noticeable or appreciated process or product, whatever, from the most of the customers you have deployed.
Okay, so I think Sindoro, you're wondering what have the customers, either from the system or from the deployment, what have they found as being the most beneficial or valuable aspect? Okay, yeah. So let's briefly try and touch on that question, and then we'll wrap up the meeting, as I know we're over time a little bit. So for everyone on the call, what have been some of the areas where you've received the most positive feedback from your customers, either around the system or the deployment process itself? So.
Ed, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So Ashok, it's just what have you? I think what I'm interpreting it as is what are the either aspects of your system or the deployment where you've received the most positive feedback from customers. So what have your customers found most advantageous and most beneficial for them? So.
Okay, I think it's both the deployment process as well, which includes the data migration, plus as the product application itself. It's really user friendly, and they are able to meet their requirements, and they are able to do field operations. We got up for both, customers were happy on both the side, migration. Does that answers your question?
Sindoro, is that answering your question?
Yes, but I would like to get other people as well, if possible, if time is enough.
Kazim or Sander or Jikal, do you have any input on that? So what really has been, the most well-received and most beneficial, service or feature of the product you're offering to your customers? So.
I think what most people still appreciate very much about Mifos in general is also one of its most controversial features when you're talking about a lot of other areas such as reports, etc., is obviously the data tables, being able to set up your own fields, set up your own forms, and customize the system to your liking like that. And that's an area we see very, very widely used. Another area we see very widely used is areas such as credit checks, type things where you have where you allow people to set up credit checks that they can apply to loans before they get approved, such as there should be no arrears within the group that this client is part of, or this client can only get this product if he has successfully repaid that product, or stuff like that. So those would be my top two.
Thanks, Sander. And then do others have any input or response to that question?
Yes.
A good question from
Yes.
Sindor?
Can I talk?
Yeah, go ahead, Jakal.
Hi, Edward. Yeah. In my perspective, I think in the future, we also more focusing on self-service web-based, or since also Android is not running, and I still have a schedule for that, actually, for implement, not for contribute the client server for Android. But I looked at in the web also, we need to consider in the future there's self-service for the end user, really end user. So in my country right now, I think it's still traditional. So they're looking for something like they keep have a question say, if I have account, can I access that? I mean, it's a very simple question, but I cannot answer that actually, because because right now Mifos looks and feels to be not easy to understand for end user, really end user. So that's why I think I can contribute for this also, because I have a required among of my client in Indonesia. That's why can we have some schedule for that actually tomorrow and Sunday, or maybe you have already the scheduling for that actually. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for that feedback, Jakal. We'll continue to take that forward in future discussions, and we do have work going on with self-service, and I'll share those links again. So I know we're over time, Sindoro, but I think your question is a great one, and I'll try and post that as a question when we send out the links to the partner discussion forum. So, but thank you, Ashok and Sander, for the inputs you gave to Sindoro's question. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining, especially those who participated actively and had great questions, or had wonderful knowledge to share from their experiences. And then we'll try and have these partner roundtables on a regular basis, and I'll send out links to the recording of the session, and then hopefully we can carry forward the discussion either on the mailing list or in the forum, and continue discussing these challenges that have been faced and how they can be overcome. So thank you, everyone, and look forward to having another one of these roundtables in the near future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. Bye-bye.